Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will talk about pragmatics, a branch of linguistics that focuses on meaning and context. Curious about the explanation? Let's discuss it.
Okay, maybe the material in this video will be a bit long, but I hope you will stay here till the end. So, before we go directly to pragmatics, we need to understand what language and linguistics are, because pragmatics is actually part of linguistics. So, what is language? Language is a system of communication based on sounds and meanings. So it's not just a collection of random sounds or words. Language is a system, which means it's organized and structured. It's used by humans to interact socially and convey messages in context. Humans use language not only to deliver messages but also to interact socially. This means language is always used in context, not in isolation. It consists of sounds and meaning that are organized systematically. Because all of that, language allows people to express ideas, thoughts, and feelings in social interaction. We don't use language alone, we use language to communicate with other people, to respond to situations, and to create meaning together. So, language is not only about grammar or vocabulary, it's about how humans use a system of sounds and meanings to communicate in real life situations. Now, let's move to the concept of linguistics. What is linguistics? Linguistics is the scientific study of language. It studies how language is structured, how it's used, and how it's understood. Linguistics doesn't judge whether a language is right or wrong, good or bad. Instead, linguistics tries to describe and explain how language actually works in real life. Because language is complex, so linguistics is divided into several branches. These branches help linguistics to focus on specific aspects of language. In general, linguistics can be divided into two major areas, microlinguistic and macrolinguistic. These two areas have different focus, but they are connected to each other. Microlinguistics focus on internal language structure like phonetic, phonology, morphology, semantic, pragmatics, and syntax. While the macro one studies language in relation to society, culture, and context. In this diagram, macrolinguistics is divided into interdisciplinary and interdisciplinary fields. The inter one means linguistics that interacts with other fields of study, while interdisciplinary linguistics focus on internal linguistic approach. From this diagram, we can see that linguistics is a very broad field. However, in this video, we will focus more on pragmatics that belongs to microlinguistics. Okay, now we're gonna talk about the pragmatics itself. What is pragmatics? One way to understand language use in everyday life is through pragmatics, which pragmatics is the study of speaker meaning. In pragmatics, we are not only interested in what words mean literally, like semantic, but what speakers actually mean when they use those words. In other words, pragmatics focus on meaning in context, focus on how their meaning shifts depending on the context, the speaker, and their intentions. For example, when someone says, "It's cold in here," they may not just be stating a fact, they might be asking someone to close the window. This kind of meaning is studied in pragmatics. Now, why is pragmatics important? It helps us to understand how and why people use them in real life. This is very important when speaking in another language or with people from different cultures. The way we say things can change how other feels, and pragmatics helps us make good choices in communication. So we can tell pragmatics helps us communicate better and to avoid confusion or misunderstanding. It also helps us to understand what people really mean, not just what they say. Now we move to the context. The role of context is a very important in pragmatics. Context includes everything around a conversation, such as who is talking, where and when the conversation happens, the physical situation, the social relationship between speakers, and the background knowledge they share. The same sentence can have different meanings in different contexts. Without understanding the context, we may misunderstand what speaker really mean or the speaker's intention. That's why context is important in pragmatics. One important topic in pragmatics is deixis. Deixis means pointing in Greek. Deixis, aka deictic, refers to words that depend on context for their meaning. The expressions need context to be understood. And there are three kinds of deixis. Person deixis used to point to things like it, these boxes, and to people, him, them, those idiots, etc. While special deixis used to point to a location like here, there, near that, etc. And temporal deixis used to point to a time like now, then, and last week. All these deictic expressions have to be interpreted in terms of which person, place, or time the speaker has in mind. Like in special, we can indicate whether movement is away from the speaker's location or toward the speaker's location. Like if you're looking for someone and she appears moving towards you, you can say, "Here she comes." But if she is moving away from you in the distance, you are more likely to say, "There she goes," right? That's why Dixis can sometimes be confusing or even funny, because some people actually use Dixis to have some fun. Like the example, when the bar owner who puts up a big sign that reads "free beer tomorrow" to get you to return to the bar can always claim that you are just one day too early for the free drink. And all of that is deixis. Another important concept is a reference. Reference is how speakers use language to identify things. It often depends on context and is understood through inference, anaphora, and presupposition. We can see that inference is listener's interpretation, anaphora is referring back to the earlier expressions, presuppositions, shared assumptions. Not all of these mechanisms are used at the same time because there is no fixed order in using these three. These mechanisms are used flexibly depending on what's needed to interpret the reference in a given context. It might be a bit confusing, but I will explain it in the next slide. Reference analysis example. So, from the sentence, she finally stopped complaining. The reference can be seen in the word she. This word is used by the speaker to identify a person. However, by itself, she doesn't clearly show who is being referred to. Therefore, we need context to fully understand the reference. We can analyze this reference through three mechanisms. First, from anaphora. If this sentence appears after a previous sentence, for example, I talked to classmate Anna yesterday, then the word she refers back to Anna. This type of backward reference is called anaphora. Second, from presupposition. The sentence presupposes that she had been complaining before. The phrase finally stop complaining implies that the action happened repeatedly in the past. The speaker assumes that the listener already knows or accepts this information. Third, from inference, the listener may infer that the complaining was annoying. Because of this, stopping the complaint is interpreted as a positive change. And from this analysis, we can conclude that the reference word she can be fully understood through context using anaphora, presupposition, and inference. However, not all of these mechanisms are always used at the same time. They are applied flexibly depending on what's needed to interpret the reference in a particular context. Now we move to speech acts. In pragmatics, language is seen as a form of action. Speech acts are action performed through language, such as requesting, promising, apologizing, etc. When we speak, we are not just sharing information, we are also doing things with our words. These actions are called speech acts. There are three types of speech acts: locutionary, illocutionary, and perlocutionary acts. These three acts happen together every time we speak. And understanding speech acts helps us know the real purpose behind someone's word. Now we are gonna talk about three types of acts. The locutionary act is the actual sentence or word spoken. It can be imperative, interrogative, or declarative. Like if the imperative one, close the door. Interrogative, it can be, can you pass the salt? Declarative, you left the door open. Then the illocutionary act is the speaker's intention, the real meaning what the speaker wants to say, like making a request, a promise, or giving an order. Then there is a perlocutionary act. Is the effect the words have on the listener. Example, speaker said, "You left the door open." It's giving statement or declarative from locutionary act. But the actual intention or the illocutionary act is giving an order so the listener would close the door. Then the perlocutionary act or the listener's response is closing the door. That's how speech acts works. And speech acts can be direct or indirect. It's depending on how the speaker performs the action. Indirect speech acts, the form and the function match. Like example, can you ride a bicycle? It's a real question to ask for your ability. But indirect, the structure or the form and the function do not match. Like example, can you pass the salt? The form is question, but the actual function is a request. Indirect speech acts are often used to sound more polite or gentle in communication. Now we move to politeness. Politeness relates to maintaining social relationship. Can be called showing awareness of another person's face or self-image. Well, we know self-image is how someone wants to be seen and treated by others. Then in here, we have FTA stand for Face Threatening Act, which is a speech act or linguistics action that threatens the listener's face or self-image. This means that what we say has the potential to make others feel uncomfortable, while FSA is speech that reduces or avoids threat to face or self-image. It's used to maintain social relationship, usually in the form of an apology, an expression of politeness, or an indirect form. FSA is a strategy to reduce FTA because almost all communication has the potential for FTA. So, politeness is how we turn FTA into FSA. For example, give me your notes. This has the potential to make someone afraid or intimidated because it sounds commanding. Then we gonna change it into could I borrow your notes, please? When politeness is added and it becomes FSA, it sounds better. Then we have two types of face or self image, positive and negative. Positive face is the desire to be accepted and belong to a group. Positive politeness shows closeness and friendliness. Let's do this together. This sentence is inviting together. Make the person you're talking to feel included and maintaining positive face. And negative face is the desire to be free from imposition and to be respected. Negative politeness shows respect and distance. Like the sentence, I'm sorry to bother you, is acknowledging that we are disturbing, showing respect, and maintaining negative face. Finally, Why do EFL students need pragmatics? Why do they need to know all of this material? Pragmatics helps avoid misunderstanding in real communication. It improves communicative competence, not just grammatical accuracy, and it teaches learners how meaning changes based on context and culture. That's all for our material today. Thank you. And if you want to read more details, you can read it directly in my reference, which is George Ewell's book. And I also give credit to literaryenglish.com for helping me provide the diagram illustrations and credit for the PowerPoint designs from Canva Creative Studio.
So, how was the explanation, guys? Do you understand what pragmatics is and all its concept? I hope so. So, to conclude this discussion, we can see that language is not only about grammar, vocabulary, uh, or sentence structure. Language is a tool for communication, and communications always happens in a context. Through linguistics, we learn how language works as a system, and through pragmatics, we learn how meaning works in real situations. Pragmatics helps us understand what speakers really mean, not just what the words literally say. Concepts like context, deixis, reference, speech acts, and politeness show us that meaning depends on who is speaking, to whom, when and where, and for what purpose. The same sentence can have different meanings depending on the situation, the relationship between speakers, and also cultural expectation. For EFL learners, understanding pragmatics is especially important because knowing grammar alone is not enough. Without pragmatic knowledge, learners may sound rude, unclear, or inappropriate, even if their sentences are grammatically correct. It's because pragmatics helps EFL learners to communicate more naturally, politely, and effectively in real life interactions. Therefore, learning this whole material allows us not only to speak English correctly but also to use English appropriately. It helps us become better communicators, not just better language learners. Yeah. So, okay, everyone, that's all from me in this video. If it helps you, you can like and comment if you have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss my next video. Bye bye.